Planning and Zoning Board of Mexico Beach for Thursday, September 6th to order. Roll call.
Mr. Masters?
Here.
Mr. Hogan? Absent. Mr. Bush?
Here.
Ms. Metcalf?
Here.
Mr. Piccolo?
Here.
Okay, the way I see it, we've got basically three things to determine today. The first thing would be the review of the final draft of the comp plan. The second thing, the future land use issue on residency and general commercial. And then the third thing being when we're going to have the transmittal hearing for the city council to forward it to the state. So does anybody on the board have anything else they think that we need to address today?
I have one question. We had talked about over the months the accessory dwelling units. I had them in here at one point and then I took them out. I don't know if there's been an opinion made.
There is not.
Okay. You can always change it later then if you decide to.
I appreciate the loud volume, but I'm getting feedback. Anybody else hearing the feedback in here?
No,
Little bit, right there.
a little bit.
You do hear it? Okay.
A little bit.
I wanted to make sure it,
You turn it down a little?
just a
Please.
little bit. Somewhere over here, I'm getting feedback.
I'm sorry, it's my warrior's voice.
I like the high volume, but it's just a
Warrior, as in W-A-R.
little
So warrior or
Yeah.
warrior?
Warrior.
Warrior,
I'm not a lawyer.
like hoo-wah,
Don't tell him.
warrior, I won't.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Thank
I'll
you.
sit back here so I'm.
So
You're too
she
loud.
doesn't blow everyone out of the audience.
Okay, so the first issue I'd like to take up is the review of the draft of the new comp plan. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at it and to review it? So what I'd like to do is take things in order, take it from the introduction to section 1 and then all the way through. And if you find something that is incorrect, a typo or that needs correction, please bring it to our attention at this time. And before we start, I'd like to say that, Alara, I really like the way you've gone on the format with the goals, the objective, and the policy being different so they're easy to recognize. I think that really looks good, and I also like the footer the way you've got it too. So I think that's really easy to find something in the comp plan now, the way you've got it laid out. So what I'd like to do is start, Michael, with you, and if you've got something, an introduction, we'll go down the line. If nothing, then we'll move on to the next one and start with you and go down the line again. Okay, Michael, introduction.
I have nothing.
Okay,
I
Laura.
have no-
David. Okay, we still need the cover sheet and we still need an index, which we don't have. So just to make note of that. Okay, section 1, purpose and intent. Michael,
Nothing.
Laura.
Purpose and intent. For the whole, are you talking for the whole?
For the whole
No.
section.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine.
David? Okay, under 1C, or excuse me, 2C, numbers L and J, I don't think you copied them right when we did them last time. It should read, protect the city's dedicated beach. And then ensure access to all city beaches.
Okay, we're talking about the beginning before the future land use.
Section 1,
Okay.
purpose and intent, where we give, this is what we want the city to look like.
Got it.
And these were the goals.
Yep.
Lima should be protect the city's dedicated beach. And Juliet should be ensure access to all city beaches. And Bill doesn't
Do you have
have,
do you have a page number?
it's page number 40.
Page number what?
40.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
She didn't, they
We
didn't
must
do
have
it. They
multiple
didn't
page
redo it.
40s now.
Okay, the next section is, we're gonna go over future land use, although we haven't finalized it yet. So, have you found anything, Michael, on that?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing recognizing the new area that we're adding to the map, but I have nothing.
Laura?
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do this, but I don't know what the appropriate time would be. So I have comments on each of the sections. Would you prefer that I make them as we do the section, or would you like them in their entirety?
As the section, this is the final review.
The residential low density, I liked it as it was. And I have not added a bunch of comments because I really didn't feast on every word in the last few times that I've been here.
Okay, when you say you liked the way the residential low density was, what did you like and what don't you like?
No, I liked it. I liked it as it stands, without. Let's see. I know, and I'm sorry, and it's probably going to throw an axe into your program, but I like it without adding anything to it. Let me explain. Would you rather I did it over?
No, please.
Let me just make sure that I'm. In the regular written, not the red copy. That's what I wanted to say. I like it as it is. Period.
Like it's proposed.
I'm sorry.
You like the comprehensive plan the way it's?
No, we're talking land use? Yeah, I thought you
Yeah.
moved on to land use, did you not?
Yes,
we are.
yes,
Okay.
this is part of the comp plan.
Right, yes, sir, I understand that. I'm just saying, as far as it is, the residential low density is, I'm good with it as it is,
As the clean copy states.
as the clean copy states.
Okay, anything else on
Not on,
future land use?
not, yes, but not in that category. I have more in the categories as we go.
Well, let's go through all of future land use at once.
Right, but do you want to do it as each category, or do you want me to do it in its entirety?
I want to do all of future land use at one time.
Okay, and how I feel about, okay. As far as the residential general goes, I think it is exactly the same with the exception of one, and that is except for number 6, which is the development restrictions. So I think it's redundant. I don't see why we need it. These are after looking at this several times and making a decision. I have not expressed this decision. I am taking the time right now to do it.
Do you want me to address that as you go, or do you want me to wait till the end?
It's up to you.
The difference between residential low density and residential general, you are correct, it's very, very similar, and a lot of these categories are very, very similar, but residential general allows duplexes, triplexes,
Right.
where residential low density does not. So
Right.
that would be the only difference between the two.
Right, and I think that particular part of it can be addressed in another section, or moved to another section, eliminating a section, and eliminating the residential general. I think that it's very hard to understand. It's easy for people here to understand this, but it isn't necessarily easy for people out there to understand this. So to have just one thing in there that's different, I don't see why we have to have a whole section. As we're changing the maps and we're doing this work, these are my opinions, I don't see why we have to have a whole section just to determine duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes when we could put that into another area.
To speak to that point, That was a discussion we had earlier about, usually you have a broad category in the plan, and then the zoning categories would be the more minute differences. So that was something we talked about before, whether or not to consolidate some of these categories, because like you said, some of them are very similar, and you might just have a residential category, but then the zoning would be one for single family and duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, one for multifamily. Have different zoning categories that implement the residential land use category. But the decision was made to continue with the existing.
And as I am new on the board, I didn't understand a whole lot of it.
Sure.
I'm starting to understand more. If this matters or it doesn't, I would just want to make my preference is no.
Sure.
That's
Well,
basically what I'm doing.
Where it matters is the length of the process it takes to go through to change, because zoning is changed just here at the local level, but anytime you change the plan, it has to go through state review. So
Right.
that's why some local governments choose to have a broad category in the plan and then have more distinct categories in the zoning code or the land development code, so that you don't have to go through the lengthy process to change it.
And this has already gone, and so that, has
No, this has not gone to
Okay.
the city commission
Okay, so,
yet.
so I'm not untimely in my mentioning.
No, you're not.
Okay, all right. That's my opinion of the residential general. The high
Okay,
density.
let's get other comments on that.
No, I tend, the comprehensive plan is a broad document to be,
What would be the reason for the redundancy other than,
no, I agree with you.
I mean, I'm
the
asking.
document should be a very broad document, and then the LDR, the development regulations should parse all that out.
okay, well, like I said, since, I'm almost the newest person up here, it just, I guess I'm a streamlined kind of person, and I like to make it understandable. So to me, I thought we could put, in looking at the different areas, we could put those duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes in another spot, since it promotes a more high density than low density. As a low density person, that's the kind of lot I have here, I like it as it is. I think that generally speaking, the family and seniors who choose to live in residential low density do it for a reason. And even though residential general is not low density, it's has almost all the same qualities with the exception of these couple things. And so I was trying to streamline. That was my thought on this particular category.
Where would you put it?
Well, I'm getting there. That's my next one. Shall I go on?
Okay, go ahead. Oh, wait, Michael, do you have any comment on what she said?
No, I would just, history of Mexico Beach in my short time here, if you don't specify it, it leaves a gap. So that would be my one recommendation, that we do specify a specific topic in every chance we can, if that's our intent. Because as soon as you leave it open to interpretation, we're right back in this room, and we're right back to who's mayor. I'm not going to go there.
Well,
But then the other thing I would say is not to undermine what's already existing. So if we change this and there's people already in this category, how do we undo that? Because then we're going to have grandfathered.
Well, on that point, you wouldn't really need to undo anything. You would just make sure that the zoning category that's assigned to the parcel is exactly the way it is today. So nothing's really
Okay.
changing, it's just how it's organized, so to speak.
Okay.
But if you're going to change these, then you certainly wouldn't want to adopt any changes until you've got the zoning lined up to go right after it.
Now, I don't, say what you just said. If
So
you,
there's levels of regulation. You've got the big overarching picture, which is the comprehensive plan.
got it.
And then you have the land development regulations, which are like the laws that implement the goals of the objectives of the
Right, I
comprehensive
understand that
plan.
part, but
So there's two levels of so to speak, land use. There's the comprehensive plan, future land use categories, which are supposed to be broad. They're supposed to be future land use categories, like what you think it will be in the future, 20 years, 10 years in the future. And then you have zoning that's attached to the land development regulations. That's a zoning map that is kind of like a second layer of the designation for the parcel. And so you might have residential up here, but then you might have residential low density or residential multifamily or residential general, however you want to label it here, that would categorize different types of residential or different densities of residential or different.
But, okay, what you were saying there, you just said that if we change it here, it doesn't change anything. Isn't that right?
What I was trying to say is that if you're going to change this, then I would make sure that the zoning is lined up to be adopted at the same hearing, so that there's no gap, there's no loophole, there's no question. And so that the zoning would need to be realigned to whatever you're doing here, so that, for example, if you want to have one residential category, and so you would eliminate residential general, and you might eliminate high density residential and just have one residential category, but then your zoning districts could be low density residential and residential general and high density residential. And so the zoning map would have those categories, but on the future land use map, it would just be one category, all residential. It's all dwelling units, right? So the density of the dwelling unit would be assigned to the zoning the more detailed density would be assigned to the zoning category.
That's kind of what I meant. I was just thinking of a way to streamline it so that it's more understandable without eliminating anything, so that there would leave a question as to where something would go. It just seemed to me like a not important category, because it says nothing different than, it's just a heading and 6 lines of the same that we already have, with the exception of the duplexes and the triplexes and the quadruplexes, which what I would like to do, I thought would be a good idea, is to put them in the high density residential, because it is a question of density. Triplexes are a lot more dense in residence than another part of the residential category. So I thought that, seeing that that was the only difference, why couldn't that particular line be put into the high density residential with number 1 and its intent? Just tack on duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. And then the only other thing in there that I thought would be changed is that under development restrictions, it would add house of worship must be in a collector arterial roadway. So really, you eliminated a whole section by moving one thing and adding something to the restrictions. I didn't think it did a whole lot. I thought that it was appropriate, and I thought it was more easily understood. That was my feeling. That's what I'm saying. The tourist commercial, I'm kind of big on removing residential from this, to leave it as a more commercial section. I don't see why residential needs to be there. There's parts of the city that have changed that I don't particularly think fit, but of course, I didn't have an opinion at the time. So in that section, just number 5, where it says allowable uses, I would take residential out. Tourist mixed use, it's fine down to number 5, where it says single family, multifamily, and any. I don't think that needs to be in there. I think that what might be nice there is having a little bit of residential, but maybe having it over a building that's already able to be there, such as a commercial building, maybe over offices like we talked about before. So it gives a little bit of a mix in there. And it's, you know, it's kind of touristy, it looks modern, but it doesn't really afford us to have a residential home in a tourist mixed-use environment, which I don't think it belongs there in the first place. That's basically my rationale for those particular changes that are my opinion. And they may be my opinion only. And I do apologize at the lateness of my comments, but I'm finally getting my feet sort of stood, and these are the things that I came up with.
Okay, we've been rehashing this now for about 3 months. And y'all haven't been here for the processes that we've gone through. If you want to take a vote to completely revisit this, we will. But I'm completely satisfied with the way it is. I know the members of the board that you're sitting in for today, and not you because you're a permanent member, are perfectly happy with, well, I'm assuming that they're happy or they would have said something prior to this. But the reason that we've done this the way we have is to make it harder to change in the future. Because if we just make everything general here, then all the city council or anybody has to do for that matter is come in, change the LDR, and then everything that we worked for to try and restrict growth is going to be destroyed.
I don't think the changes that I mentioned restrict anything. That's my opinion. However, I understand that I am late, Johnny come lately in this, and it's certainly only as I voiced my opinion. And that doesn't mean hide your hair in the long run, really.
Well, it does, because if the majority of the board as it sits today is unhappy
Well-
with what we've got and would like to go with what you've got, then we need to readdress or make the changes today. So that's what we're facing.
Well, it was something I felt that I needed to instill because it's how I feel about it.
Okay.
That's,
Michael?
I'm leaning toward more constraint, more guidance, more defined guidance, because the lines are gonna become blurred if we don't. I think that's what we're seeing. The lines between the differences become blurred, and as soon as a developer comes in, then everybody goes running in that direction. If we're going to contain Mexico Beach, I think we have to be more conservative in the plan rather than less.
David?
I understand what Ms. Metcalf is saying, but I think I've been here through all of these debates, and it was hashed over and over and over, and I think it probably should stay the way it is.
that's fine. I wanted
Okay.
to say what I had to say. I didn't expect everybody to change their mind, quite frankly.
Okay. David? Changes on, or something needs to be fixed under future land use? Okay, page 1 of 1, Alara. We don't have future land use, page 1 of 1. It just says page 1 of 1. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, not, disregard,
Okay.
disregard. That was something I crossed out and
Okay.
and noticed. Under public institutional, page 1.5, impervious surface not to exceed, oh, got that too, sorry. Okay, that was the wrong one. Under recreation, page 1.6, there is no impervious surface. Whoop, I'm not, nope, forget what I said. I have not marked off the stuff.
Sure.
Maybe something else. Okay, page 114, objective 1-9. The AICUZ.
Just so I
and the
know, are we
type-
working off of the red line copy or the?
No, I'm working off the clean copy.
1-9, okay.
Everything that I do and that Bill will be doing will be off the clean
Okay.
copy.
Page 1-9,
Page 114,
I'm sorry.
objective 1-9.
Okay.
The policy 1-9-2, the Tyndall Air Force Base Air Installers Compatible Use Zones that needs to go in front of the first
Got it.
AICUZ
Yep.
rather than in front of the second one. Let me see if Bill's got anything here. Okay, page 1-2, general residential, for residential general, allowable uses. He's got 1.1.4.A, numeral number 5 rather than Roman number 5. And what I have in mind is a large Roman numeral 5 rather than the number 5.
Okay.
I went through, and that's what I was looking for, and didn't catch. And then the same thing goes under high-density residential, number 5,
Yep.
policy 1.1.4.B, capital V. For 5.
Well, that should be a number 4 too. Well, number 5 too.
So it should be a numeral 5?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just saying that the allowable uses that were listed in the previous
Okay.
category are also allowed in this one.
Okay, page 1-10. Objective 1.2. There needs to be a space in front of provide.
Okay, I have a space on mine,
I have
but
a
I'll
space.
check it.
Yeah, and he's got the same thing for objective 1.8 with a space in front of 8. And I think when you look at the hard copy rather than what he's got here, that it is there. It's
Yeah.
just the thing he's working off of is smaller print and it looks
Okay.
like there's nothing there.
Okay.
So I think that's okay. Okay, moving on to transportation element.
So those were already decided, I thought.
Well, we were gonna go through for typos and stuff. Because I found some stuff,
Okay.
I think. I found stuff on some of them.
I think that technically.
Yes, I did find some stuff.
You've already voted on that, but, I think I can fix typos, but nothing contextual.
Okay, well, transportation element, anything?
I don't have it.
I don't have that.
Okay, one thing that we did vote on and approve that has not been changed is policy 2.5.1. We took out the subject to city council approval for clarification. And I remember us voting to do that.
What is the date on the bottom of the version that you're looking at?
725.
Okay.
So that was all I had for that. Does anybody else have anything in transportation? Housing element.
I haven't gotten the whole about
It's
that last?
online.
The draft?
For us, yes.
Okay, I haven't been able to get to it, so.
Okay.
I have nothing.
David? Housing element. Let's see what I don't understand what I've got written here. Policy 3.1.7. There's a word left out on line 2 between housing and at. Is should be inserted. Wait, let me catch up to me. It's page 1.1 of 6 under housing element.
Page 1 of, what number?
Page 1 of
317?
6 of housing element is policy 3.1.7.
Coordination with private developers.
Excuse me?
The coordination with private developers on the location and construction of workforce.
No,
housing.
land development regulations, 3.1.7.
The land development regulations shall include processes that streamline the permitting process when workforce housing is at least, okay.
Yes, we need to have is inserted. Policy 3.2.5. And I know we discussed this also. Rather than read uniform and equitable treatment, it should provide a uniform and equitable. Provide for equitable. Provide for uniform and equitable treatment. Let me check Bill's stuff here. Okay, I didn't catch this one. Transportation element, page 2-1, goal 2A. What is goal 1A?
I have a goal T1.
What
but
do you have?
For the first goal, the traffic circulation element, I have provide and maintain a safe and efficient transportation system throughout.
Okay, the copy we've got says that's goal 2A.
I'll have to check.
Okay?
I didn't bring the most recent, I don't have the most recent copies with me of that one. 'cause
Yeah, but the one
I
I've
wasn't-
got also said it's 2A.
Okay.
So I didn't catch that when you caught that one. Housing element, no. David? Oh, wait, that's what we just did. My bad. General utilities element. David?
No.
Okay, general utilities element, page 4-2. Policy 4.4B16. And the word provision of should be changed to provide.
Page 4.2?
That was
So
the
I-
semantics thing.
So what, are you saying, I'm pretty sure I changed that. Your version is dated 7/25?
My version is dated 7/25.
I don't have the most recent ones I sent to Adrian with me.
Well, that's what he sent us, because we only had this sent to us
I'm
like
pretty
4 or
sure
5
I
days
changed-
ago.
I'm pretty sure I changed that, but I'll check again.
Okay. And if it is, that's fine. I mean, that's just the copy I've got doesn't have that.
Okay.
And that was all I had on that. Let's see. Bill doesn't have anything on that. Conservation element.
Good.
And I'm good on that one. Bill has nothing. Recreation and open space. I'm good. Bill's good. Intergovernmental coordination element. Okay, first thing, goal 1A, you've got bold. It should be just caps. And I think that was all I had on this one. Bill has nothing. Capital improvements. I have nothing. Bill has, okay, he's got a different, okay, under policy 1.1, page 9-1.
I don't have a 9-1.
Yeah, I think the only thing on the agenda today was the future land use, so I don't know that they were
I'm
distributed.
I'm not seeing anything you're talking about.
That's because we didn't bring that part of it with us, because we didn't know that we were going to do that. On the agenda, it just says future land use. That's my opinion anyway. That's why I didn't bring it.
Okay, Laura, is your latest under policy 9.1.1? You got A, B, and C with a number 2 and a number 3 after the B and C, but nothing after the A.
Is that for the purposes of this element? Policy 9.1.1?
Yes, yes.
It's on Bill's document. What is the date on the bottom of his?
His is 8-9.
Yeah, see, I think I made these changes that you've already mentioned, and that should be reflected in the 8.9 version. You're looking at the 7.25 version.
Yeah, that's what was translated to us.
Okay,
So that's,
I'm sorry.
okay. Okay, well, that completes that then. The next issue is future land use. And one thing that we were going to talk about was whether or not to allow residencies in the general commercial, with the feeling from some of us is that if we allow residents to come into general commercial, we won't have any general commercial property left. So, as members of the board, we couldn't agree, so I went to the city council and asked them for guidance so we could actually determine what they thought was the best for the city. So I got input from 3 of the council members. 2 council members thought we should allow residents in general commercial. 1 of them didn't. So that's the city council's thoughts on that. Now, as far as general commercial property that exists, if you look at the current zoning map, it doesn't truly reflect where we are. So I went through, took the zoning map and went through all of Mexico Beach. And everything that you see I've got blacked here, blacked out, was general commercial, which is no longer available because there either somebody living there or there's already a business there. So as far as available, general commercial exists There's one lot here on 25th and 98. There's a couple on 32nd, and not just back from 98. There's this area just across from the park on the beach. There's some area down there just to the west of Parker Park, and then all this area back there off of 15th. That's all that exists now. So before I open it up for the board, let me open it up for public input. So I'd like to get whoever is here, if they have anything to say about residence and general commercial, please come up to the microphone and present your case for or against.
Figured I'd be okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, first of all, on that map that you pointed out, La Siesta, which is black, is all houses. So that doesn't exist for commercial space anymore.
I would say 80% of that black is housing, residency of some sort.
Throughout this process, I've made my thoughts known about putting residential and commercial for exactly this reason. We've run out of commercial space. And I know that when you came to the city council the last time and you talked about that and asked for it, for their opinions, you were told that criteria already exists in the LDR if you build a house in commercial space, in general commercial. And that's true, it does, but it's very interesting how it's put. One of the problems that I have, not just with running out of commercial space, but allowing houses to be built under the current regulations in commercial space, is you have to use the residential setbacks if you build a house in general commercial, except your front setback. Residential has a 20-foot setback. General commercial has a 12, and it states very clearly in here that you have to abide by all of the residential setbacks except the front setback. So if you figure this and you look at somebody who's sharp enough to see this, you can get about 840, 860 square feet of extra space on a residential house in a general commercial space because of that 8-foot difference in the front setback. That's the size of a small house that you can build in addition to your house. So if somebody wanted to build a residence in a general commercial space, that would be basically another house. And that is a huge advantage over residential space that other people don't have, and it makes no sense. So that's just something to consider. But as I sent an email to Jim, you, and Bill, and those are the only two emails of the board I had hoped that it would trickle down to everybody else. I pointed out in that email how much residential tract we have to allow more houses to be built. And it ended up with about, and these are not just the individual platted residential spaces. We have, on the east side of town, from 15th Street over, we have, I don't remember how many I listed in there, but it came up to about the equivalent of 240 additional houses in large tracts of land going from 1 acre to 10 acres.
Okay, let me clarify what she's saying. There's 51 acres available.
Okay, thank you. It's 51 acres of additional residential zoned land right now on the east side of town that's not platted out, plus an additional 10.5 acres in the Casuna subdivision, which, does everybody know what Casuna is? Mm-hmm. Okay. That has not yet been developed. That's another 60 houses if they build it out. And that's in addition to all of the individually plotted lands. So to me, that's ample residential. And you compare that with the little commercial land we've already got, and the fact that when we were going over some of these things, and we asked Alera, this was quite a while back, what's the standard ratio of commercial to residential? And she said the standard is usually 85% commercial and 15% residential. Other way.
85% residential.
15% commercial. We have 5% commercial. So we're already way below the average to have this because we've used up our commercial for residential. It makes no sense to continue adding residences in any commercial space when our commercial offerings have gone backwards in the last 20 years. We have fewer amenities, fewer services, fewer stores, fewer everything from the business community than we had in 2000. And all we've done is add houses. So if we intend to actually continue operating like a city and offering services and businesses to our residents, I'm not talking about the tourists, but our residents now, we have to have commercial space. And if you'll think about it, we have no way to keep the money from the commercial enterprises in the town. If you want anything, you have to go to Port St. Joe or cross the bridge. We lose all of that business. There's no money coming in from business because we don't have businesses because we don't have the space. Case in point, 40th Street Pizza. They tried and tried to stay here. No place to put a pizza parlor that would allow them to come in. So we've got to do something about putting residential in commercial. I like the idea of putting residential over commercial. I think that fits well into our community, the mom and pop idea that we always keep talking about. That's fine if you have the commercial on the bottom floor. But I don't believe we should be taking commercial space and building single-family houses. So we need to really think about that because that 50-plus acres we've already got, that's potential, excuse me, that's potential houses already. We can't continue this way and just become a community of houses. We are not a housing subdivision. We are a city. And we are rapidly becoming just a housing subdivision where everybody has to go out for it. So that's my thought on it.
Anyone else? Okay, before we begin deliberation on the board here, let me reiterate the city's position. Of the 5 council members, we got responses from 3. 2 wanted to continue to allow residency in general commercial. 1 wanted she was okay with allowing residents over a business, like you referred to the mom and pop thing, but not multifamily, not single individual houses and duplexes and stuff like that. Okay, so that's the city's position. So I'll open it up to members of the board for discussion.
Well, I understand what Lisa said. I mean, I'd love to go out and get a cheeseburger at lunch for a reasonable price, but there's nothing here. I have to travel Port St. Joe or Panama City to do anything at all. But on the reverse side of that, you can't force people to come in and set up businesses. If there's money to be made, somebody's going to figure out a way to make it.
Not if there's no land.
Well, as far as building houses in those areas, I guess I've got to agree with it. I don't see a change, why we need to change that at this point. If I own, okay, let me ask you this. If I own commercial or general commercial property right now, I can sell it to anybody to build a home on.
Correct.
Okay, if we change that, then that property either loses its value at that point, because it's going
It
to,
loses its value as residential.
as
property.
residential, exactly right, which is going to be an impact on the owner.
Well,
And
you,
I've got kind of a issue with rights in that situation. I mean, if I bought a piece of property over here thinking I can build a house on it, or thinking I can sell it for someone to build a house on, and then all of a sudden the rules are changed, that just doesn't seem to be right for me. So I guess I'd leave it like it is.
Anyone else?
Based on the numbers, the percentages, the impending tax increase that's in the next board meeting, the fire assessment, where all the businesses are protected from any challenges, it seems like the city council is only pro-business for its businesses in place. So there's no competition allowed in the city of Mexico Beach, in my opinion. And that's why they will not allow further development. And they chase any development out. Look at the lawsuits. So to me, because we are in an acute situation where our commercial is very limited, we have to protect those assets. We have to go to the board and say, it's to you, board, city, what are you going to do to increase commercial use in this town? And to utilize the adequate land on the backside of town. Could they entice Gulf Foods to move back there? Why is Dollar General not here? If we're building all these homes, there has to be provisions to sustain those homes. But I think we have this residential bug right now. So if we're saying that the goal is 15%, we're currently managing 5%, the planners, I think it's upon us to plan to say that the remaining red needs to be protected. And I know that this board does not do taxing, but if you're trying to entice things to happen, this city has to do that. Hey, we have a great visitor center that we pay a lot of money for. Where's the commercial development section? You go right across St. Joe Beach and you have everything you need in a lesser community than we have right here in Mexico Beach. Why are we different? I think you look at the board and you look at their resumes and you'll find out that some of them have personal interest in building personal residential homes. So are they the ones that are skewing this? Are they the ones that are manipulating this? And I think if you go back through time, you'll see that decisions have been made for personal interest to spite the city. I've only been here a year. I've been asked, I've been told, wait until you're here long enough to be able to say something. But I'm trying to protect my interests and my property, because this was Mayberry by the Sea. Now it's not. So I think that this board, if we're going to plan for the future and what this town is going to look like, we need to protect the valuable resources and then push hard for them to be developed. Because if we don't fix the tax base, we're going to lose our fire department. If we don't fix the tax income, all that black is on 98. That should be a different taxation. If it's so coveted that everybody wants to put their houses there, it should be different than my tax rate 4 blocks back. So, okay, Gulf Foods, you're now going to pay more because you're in a prime location. Or, we're going to give you a good deal and move you to the back. This is just an example. But how do we entice business here? Other towns are already doing it. Callaway, Panama City, they're already doing this. So either we become the subdivision and live with it and pay astronomical taxes, or we stand ground and say no. And we maybe put more guidance in the plan to restrict the rezoning, just because they want to.
Laura?
Well, thank you for that. I think that the city as a whole, like I said too, I know that in the past I voted for the duplexes that was it Adam had wanted over on 41st or 42nd Street, because there hasn't been any interest in that piece of land. I do think, though, that the city should have a goal to entice business, and you can't just sit here and wait for a business to come to you. You have to have some kind of a planning, committee or board or whatever that goes out or that decides to make this an enticing place for some to be. As a general rule, I am conservative. I don't want this to be a Panama City Beach by any means. But at the same time, as a taxpayer, we do pay the highest taxes in Bay County, and not that I don't love the city, but for what? I don't see what, other than the beach, the canal, which I do not use. I just don't, I don't see any reason why we can't have a nice commercial type, type businesses here that will serve us as residents as well as our tourist base.
So you have the opinion that residents should not be allowed?
I think I stated that.
Okay. Okay, I think the answer to me is obvious if one does a critical analysis of the facts as we know them, whether or not we should allow residents in general commercial. Okay, when commercial development comes in, it brings revenue in the form of taxes, it brings opportunities for the members of the community, and also brings employment for members of the community. And in order to have a healthy community, and I can send you to all kinds of different resources that'll tell you that support what I'm saying, in order to have a healthy community, you have to have a healthy commercial district or some kind of commerce in the area, which we don't have now and we really need. Okay, I've already gone over, there's a little available general commercial property left. I mean, there's some prime property on 98, but most of this area here on the north side of 15th, if you leave 15th proper and go back, you've got dirt or gravel roads which lead in the swamp. Who wants to go back here? You're not going to find anybody with any kind of business that wants to go back in there unless the city does something about it. There's also plans for future residential development. This area right here by the post office, which is, although now it's not available for commercial, they're looking to put in there, Malerba Development is going to go in, planning to go in with 29 cottages and 12 multifamily residences. Forehand, Husband, and Watson are also looking at 9 duplexes somewhere in this area along 15th. That's more commercial area that will disappear. I wasn't here when this happened, but this whole area here along 15th at one time was zoned to general commercial. But a developer came in, had it rezoned residency, so that's land that's been lost within the last 15 years there. The same thing can happen elsewhere. So, given there just isn't much left at all, and if we're going to do something, the city needs to do what you've said and what you said, needs to do something about promoting commerce to come in. Because generally, another fact is, anytime, and I've been guilty of this the same way the city council has, when somebody comes in and asks for a variance or for something, everything is looked at in a microcosm. They look at that one piece of property without considering what's going to happen to the city. And this has happened for the last God knows how many years. I've been here for I've been here for 15 years. And I know it's been that way since I've been here, and God knows how long it's gone on before that. Nobody considers the general picture, just what happens on that one piece of property. And I think we need to consider the whole. And although the city council's come out and 2 people said, allow the residents, you know, one has said no. I don't think the city council is fully aware of what's been going on. At least I hope they haven't been, because if you've got the city's best interest at heart, you can't keep allowing this residency, this general commercial property to go to general residency. And then, as was stated earlier from the public, there's ample residential property out there to develop. In addition to what's available, how many people have we seen in the last 3 or 4 years come in, tear something down, tear a building down, put in a new residence, add on to something that exists? So in addition to those available residencies, you know, you can tear something down or add on to what's there if you don't like what's there. But I really don't think we should be taking away, you know, what we have left. Our job is to consider what's best for Mexico Beach. Council has made their wishes known, but I don't think we're here to do what the council wants. I think we're here to do what's best for Mexico Beach. And I think we should recommend one of two things. Either that there is no residential allowed in general commercial from now on, or with the exception, and Laura, did you come up with that thing I asked you to come up with where we have an exception of allowing the second story up commercial stuff? Have you got it?
I can get it to you. I don't have it with me.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the mom and pop deal allowing residents above the business. Like somebody builds a pizza parlor and wants to live above it, I don't have any problem with that. But I do have a problem with the multiplexes, the condominiums, the single-family homes, and all that stuff. So what I would like to see us, you know, vote on is to, one, either allow the mom and pop type stuff or no residency whatsoever. And if the city council doesn't like that, well, then let them be the ones to say, no, we're not going to do that. I don't think we should do that, because I don't think it's in the city's best interest.
May I ask a question real quick? Laura, you work with different communities other than this, right? How do other communities handle the situation?
As far as allowing residential and commercial in
And
the
commercial,
same
correct.
category, usually it's not. This is unusual case. Usually, commercial and residential, or what I like to call residential and non-residential, since that's everything, whether it's a church, because that's not really commercial, or whatever
Okay.
it might be, would be in a mixed-use category.
Let me just review very quickly for those of you who haven't been here long enough to remember. We used to have a viable commercial waterfront. Around the canal, when you turn onto 42nd Street, there's the first lot is vacant. That used to be a restaurant. And everything around, you go down Miramar, that was all commercial. There was a couple of mom and pop motels there. You curved around where all the townhouses are. That was all commercial. The townhouses there where Chuck Guilford lives there, that was Blue Water Inn. That was all commercial down to there. So we had a working commercial waterfront with a restaurant on it, which is what most tourist-oriented waterfronts have. So all of those townhouses and the Blue Water Inn were turned to residences. Every single condominium you see in this town was built on commercial space. Paradise Shores across from Toucans, the club, Summer House, all of those, that was our commercial space. And most of the townhouses on 98 were our commercial space. That was a decision that was made by the city council back when the real estate boom started. So we have destroyed our viability as not just as a residential spot, but it's affected the tourism because we don't have a restaurant down there at the marina. And while it's not a great big marina the canal, by any stretch of the imagination, if there were still shops and a restaurant down there, you'd pull more people down there. You've got to look at these things. And right now 2 other developments that, of course, the Corey property has been sold and the developers have already started their very preliminary plans. Don't know what's going in there, but that's the 88 acres back there. The 16, 15 acres directly behind Gulf Foods and Sharon's, they have started their development. It's zoned residential. They want to turn it into tourist, mixed use? Tourist mixed use, part of it, so that they can, as they stated, get the maximum residential dwellings in there possible. So we've got all of these things. We do not have a planning department, never had one in this town. And I talked to Mel about this briefly a couple of weeks ago, and he said it was unusual. I talked to the building department, they said, yes, it's unusual. Almost every other place has a planning department and a building department. We don't have that. You go first to a planning department and they look at the overall effect of what you want to bring in. How does it affect traffic? How does it affect everything? How does it work within the comprehensive plan? That's what a planning department does. And you have to give them all of this information. And then if they okay it, they send you to the building department where you pull the building permits. The building department, if it's a standard building department, only works with the actual building itself. We're missing exactly half of that process. And while that might have worked in the 70s and 1980s, it does not work now, especially with these 5 developments coming in that are already in the works. The building department as it exists now is not capable of doing any of this. They do not plan. And we have a major problem. Another problem that we've got is if these 5 developments that are in the pipeline right now, which comprehensive plan and which set of land development regulations are they going to have to work under? That hasn't been answered yet. We're in the midst of changing it, but if they get their permits in by X date, do they get to go by the old ones? Because we're making some significant changes here. So how do we know what they're going to be using? That's a question that's got to be
I
asked.
can answer that.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So they can't be bound to anything that's not adopted. So until this is adopted, they would fall under the current policies and regulations. And if they get a development order in and approved before this is adopted, then they will fall under what's on the books
There's the
today.
But it
answer.
doesn't require state approval, it just requires adoption by the council, is that correct?
This,
No.
Yes.
no, this requires state approval.
Before we can go under it?
And you have a 31-day waiting period after they adopt it by ordinance in order for people to challenge it. That you have to have a waiting period before it becomes effective so that somebody might challenge it if they do.
Okay, I was unaware of that, okay.
It's a state law.
So there are some major issues dealing with commercial that have to be answered immediately. My personal opinion is the city should put a moratorium on commercial building until the comp plan, at least the comp plan, is adopted and ratified by the state. I think that has a snowball's chance, you know where, but that's what I think. But we have to look at this because nobody's looking at the overall picture here. And when the Corey property comes online and when the 15 acres behind Gulf Foods and Sharon's comes online and when all this stuff on 15th Street comes online, we're going to have some problems. So the Planning and Zoning Board is the only group that stands between chaos and the town. And if we are all going to try to keep the town as close to what we've got now, granted, we all know it's going to change, but we've got to be able to control that change. I am by no means anti-development, anti-progress, anti-anything. But we used to have a viable working Chamber of Commerce with all of our merchants very involved in it. We used to have so many more stores and services in 2001 than we have now. I don't understand why we keep going backwards. when we have more people coming.
Lisa, why do you think, I mean, you've been here a long time, longer than a lot of people maybe in this room. What happened to make a change? And you don't have to answer that.
Greed.
If you don't.
Greed. Let's just leave it at greed. Greed made it change. Greed and the power base. That's what made it change.
Okay.
And it all started changing in the very early, like 2003, 4, when we were discovered, like the whole Forgotten Coast was discovered, and the real estate developers started coming in. That's when it all changed. We've been limping along pretty well, but that's when it changed. But we've got to do something about commercial. I am absolutely not for mega commercial things. I want it to be small, mom and pop, little things. You know, a doctor's office, a dentist's office. We used to have a veterinarian. I used to take my dogs to him. He had several thousand clients, y'all. He was right by Gulf Foods where the vacant lot is. We used to have all of these services. We no longer have them, and we no longer have a place to put them. So we've got to do something if we want to offer the services to our people, and the people who are moving here, face it, we're still a retirement community. As seniors, we have to have certain services. Why should we have to drive that far? Why should we lose the business? So we've got to do something. And the councils change almost every year. It's up to the Planning and Zoning Board to give them a plan, because y'all are all we've got, and up to the Planning and Zoning Board to be firm to them and explain why, and to fix things so that as the council changes almost every year, we don't, as we said earlier in the meeting, lose the ground we're working on. So we've got to do something about this.
If I can make a couple comments?
Sure.
So, first of all, wiser words have never been spoken by Lisa and you folks.
Why is what?
Wiser words have never been spoken by Lisa. That's right. And a couple things bear that out. Number one, I've said it before, so if you heard it, just ignore it. But for every dollar of revenue municipalities receive, there's a demand for services for that dollar. Residential takes more than $1 in services. Businesses take less than $1. So no question what you're saying is great. Also, we had an opportunity to work with Gulf Power to bring in some of their economic development professionals and assess Mexico Beach and our spending habits in other communities to determine where and how we're spending our money. That would give us an opportunity to figure out what businesses would be appropriate here. Not the mega stores that Lisa referred to, but more appropriate. The mayor nixed the idea at a council meeting and the board didn't stand up to that, so we dropped it. So that's a missed opportunity.
Thank you, Mel.
Comment? Anything more?
Well, kind of on a side comment, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got a haircut. And I was in Panama City. Thank you. And the lady says, you know, just a barbershop chit chat. She said, where do you live? I said, Mexico Beach. First thing she said, oh, that's a place that don't allow businesses from outside. That was the first comment this woman made, and I was shocked. I said, well, yeah, that's it. But that was what she said the very first thing. You know, amazing.
Mel, do we have a short range and long range plan for the city? Why not?
We have a strategic plan, but it's very basic. It doesn't really, in other words, my experience here is economic development is something we all want, but no one wants to mess with.
The other thing is I'd like to also revisit that 80 acres that's sitting on 386. And the opportunity that maybe that 80 acres, which is right now white, might give us for something other than houses.
Well, didn't the city address trying to annex that before? You were told no?
That
Not
belongs
during my
to,
time.
it belongs to
St. Joe Company.
St. Joe Company. Well, they've worked with us on many other plots. I don't know why they wouldn't It's just sitting there, it's on our side, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would provide the opportunity, if it were annexed, to provide more general commercial property,
Right.
because, you know, my position is the city's gonna have to create some, because
Right.
what we have now is not attractive. They're either gonna have to make what we have now attractive for businesses to come in, or create additional. And there's several areas where they could create additional stuff, you know, particularly out there to the area, you know, this is now tourist commercial west of the canal.
Well, I'm on First Street, so back of my lot and the rest of First Street back right up to that 80 acres. That's, you know? So, I mean, it's a perfect opportunity to, I think, if we could visit that. It's a huge space. I know it's not on 98, but it's within city limits, and, you know, maybe that might help our situation.
Yeah.
Actually, it's unincorporated Bay County, it's not within our city limits.
Okay, it's
So we
unincorporated.
have to get it annexed.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I am sorry. Apologize. Didn't know.
And just to remember, we do not have an economic development plan. I've been hounding for years for us to get one. We don't have a
Well-
plan to attract what
Right.
we want.
Right.
On that topic, the state has recently been working through, it used to be a pilot program, and now it's a full-fledged thing, and Port St. Joe went through it, where it's called the Competitive Florida Partnership Program.
Yes, yes.
And you can apply for that grant. It's a $80,000 grant over the period of 2 years, and it will help you develop an economic strategy. And the state and several state agencies will come in and work with you
Yes.
locally and help you figure out what your assets are, what your hurdles are, and meet with local officials and help you try and figure out how to move forward economically.
Here's what I'd like to see us do
That's
today,
good.
okay? And again, this is my position, it's not the board's position. I would like to see us, you know, vote to limit no more residencies in the general commercial area, or go with the mom and pop thing above the business, which I kind of prefer myself.
I like it.
And write the future land use element to say that when we present it, the transmittal meeting to the board, explain our position, and also at the same time, come up with these recommendations as far as having a planning, you know, an economic development plan, a planning department, and all that other stuff. Because I think when the council looks at this, from our perspective and all the stuff we've talked about today, they're going to understand that we've got to go somewhere commercially. We can't just be a big residency area. We've got to do something else. So this is not our purview to do this, but we can certainly make the council aware of it. And I think the time to do it is when we put it in the comprehensive plan and tell them why.
Agreed.
And if they don't want to accept it, then there's nothing we can do about it, but at least we have to make them aware of it.
If I could just add to that, one of the things that I was researching when I chose to move to this town for some reason, the bypass is supposed to come behind Mexico Beach. What is the impact of that? As far as I know, right now, 386 is where it's going to meet 98.
Correct.
That means the flow of traffic is going to change in Mexico Beach, and the value of commercial property will change. And then lots that are just made of sand, or just water and sand, will become viable products. I think we need to also add to that language, as we recommend to the board, 5 to 10 year plan is this town changes from what it is now to what it's going to be. And that's going to be an off-ramp until the next leg is built, which is going to be another 10 to 20 years. So we may have a fast food restaurant because we will have traffic. All I'm saying is the potential for massive flow in one location as the town grows. The red land to the north becomes more viable. The empty lot becomes more viable. But we have no plan to lead that way. We have no plan to say, these are the areas that we need to protect. So I agree with you, sir, on your recommendation that we recommend to the board what our planning guidance is. That empty lot, I think we should be going after that. We just went for a lot behind Public Works here to give us more city land. So and I think we have the right mayor right now to do those negotiations with St. Joe Paper Company to acquire that property, to then become that hub that we may want to attract the higher traffic businesses. Now, I'm not a businessman. I came here with the idea that I was going to start a food truck. Wow, was I wrong? But if you go to Seaside, right in front of their major distribution area, their commercial area, there's trailers that serve food, and it's one of the most quaint things you've ever seen. Mom and pop, what a beautiful thing. But in this town, we chase it away. For whatever reason, we chase exactly what we're looking for away. So I would just say, as we consider our recommendations, that we do a holistic look. This could be the golf cart community that everybody covets. But we're not allowing it to happen. And I think that not looking at the bypass would be a huge mistake, because it's going to happen.
Let me add for the bypass, because I've covered it from the very beginning when I was a reporter with the Star, and I have to keep an eye on it now. The bypass will be in unincorporated Bay County. It will not be part of our city limits.
Right.
It's on the far side, where Bubba Harmon lives out there.
Just past
It
the.
comes out behind there, it comes in. They purchased the right of way from the Harmons, from the St. Joe Company, and from Desiree Ranch, which is the Mormon church. And it will hook back in just before the Tyndall line. We will have anywhere from 1 to 5 off-ramps coming.
That's only the first leg, though.
Well, the first leg has already been built. The first leg is what we call the Windmark portion.
Oh,
That's the first. Now, there's 2 highways. There is the Gulf to Bay Highway. That's a different project. This is the, we'll call it the Back Beach Road. It's when they moved Highway 98 down in Gulf County and did the Windmark thing. The second leg of the Back Beach Road is from where you come out of St. Joe Beach and you hit the parking area.
It's by
And
Discovery
it runs
Lane.
directly behind St. Joe Beach up to 386.
And across,
And will hook in almost where the Harmon House is,
right,
about a quarter of a mile
right.
north of that. And that's the second leg. The third leg is what we call here Back Beach Road, which will come behind Mexico Beach and hook back in. When this was set up in those 3 phases, and it will happen, when this was set up, we preliminarily negotiated anywhere from 1 to 5 off-ramps coming off of our section from 15th Street behind Mexico Beach. So there will be, and that's just a 3 to 4 mile section, there will be access to that, and there'll be access from 386 and access when you come through Tyndall. But that will not be part of the city limits. We have no control over what will be built there, if anything, because that's unincorporated Bay County. And there won't be as much as people think because 3 private property owners own that land. So it's not like it's just unincorporated Bay County and nobody owns it. So there will not be that. I don't think there will be nearly as much development. So we will have no control over that, basically is what I'm saying.
I would like to say, though, that you have a little bit of control because they're going to want water and sewer services. They're not going to want to be on well and septic tanks when they build that area. So if the city has some sort of ordinance or policy that says they're not going to extend the water and sewer outside of the city limits, then they would be required to annex into the
Okay,
city.
point taken. So we'll have some, but just remember that that doesn't necessarily mean as soon as it gets built, it's part of the city.
I didn't indicate part of the city.
Yeah,
I just
I didn't
indicated a flow of traffic change that will make land on the backside of the city more viable to commercial
That's
Right.
very true, very true.
You know, not ask, we can
Oh.
come.
You're asking. No, if you're just asking, that's,
You already got it.
To come to the council meeting and present exactly how you presented it today, because sometimes I don't think the council gets enough information before they just
if I'm here.
set on something. Because it being
Neither does.
presented like it was presented today, I think will really open up some eyes.
Okay.
Thank you. Great.
Anything else from the board? Okay, well, I need a motion to either eliminate residencies in the general commercial area, to allow residency in the general commercial area in the comp plan, or one which will, the exception, how is that, would that be worded?
Yeah, I know I had written something up, but I can get it back to you again if you're not comfortable.
Yeah, we need it for the minutes, that's the thing, though.
You mean the exception of building above?
Yes, allow residencies.
Usually that's a provision in a mixed use category, but if you want it to be in the general commercial, I recall writing it up and apologize if I didn't send it to you, but I can, did I send it to you, Mel? Having residential above?
I mean, it's up to the board, whichever way you want to go. I mean, we can go with no residency at all, if you want.
Yeah, it's up.
But I need a motion so we can do something.
It could be an exception that a commercial use can have a residency if it's incorporated with.
Well, it'd have to be vertical. It'd have to be vertical
And we
over.
put that language, we put that specific language in. That's the exception to when residential can be in a general commercial.
But do you see that as a kind of a point that may, I mean, if you build 4 of these places and somebody lives above them, are you gonna be able to require businesses on the bottom, or, I mean, it seems to me like you're opening a
Yes.
can of worms. Why not just say no?
Actually, I think it's a really great idea because you will be creating a more walkable community, or people might be able to come downstairs from their residence and go to the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Or, and I think that, in my mind, that would be the greatest way to develop along 98. Because then you're
Well,
creating
I
a way
agree.
for people to
I
walk.
agree with you, Laura, but the problem is there's just not that much space here to do that. Now, where I just came from, they built thousands of condominiums, and under it is
But
thousands
it
of
could,
businesses.
it could potentially, I don't know how they're constructed, but it could potentially transition into that.
Didn't you just say no residential except second and third floors over ground floor?
Well, that's what I asked her because I thought she was going to write something up, go vertical over the commercial, but we don't. What we need is wording to go in the minutes, so whoever makes the motion, if that's what they're going to do, we need the wording. If not, then just, whatever, somebody give me a motion for something.
I motion the use of general commercial to not allow residential with the exception of vertical residential properties connected to the commercial entity.
Over commercial.
Vertical.
Vertical.
And I'll second it.
Is that sufficient for the minutes?
If it doesn't have to be exactly what you just said, I can certainly work with that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Metcalf?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Lord. Okay, and then the last issue is I thought we were going to do the,
Well, I need to know one more thing. How many, do you want the density to be 18 dwelling units to the acre then, if it's allowed? I mean, it's not gonna be, ever get that high, but, because of your height limit, but that's what it is in the
Yeah, I think it
LTR.
is.
Height limit's 32, right? Height limit on that's 32, right?
Yes.
yes, 18.
18.
Oh, and there was one other thing too that I wanted to. Now I got to find my notes from the city council meeting. Does anybody have their LDR here?
No.
I have it on my phone. It's
Can I read what you wrote down for motion?
Okay, what I want to do, Laura, is add this If you build a residency in one of the other zones, it has to conform to the requirements for that. And after reading the LDR 6 times, I finally found it.
Yeah, this is that big long email I sent you. Is that the one?
Yes, that's the one. So we need to, no, that's not it. I'll call you on the phone and talk to you about it. But we need to have that in the comp plan, so, and we need to have it clear. It's what you and I
Yeah,
talked about before.
I think it needs to go in the code though, in the land development regulations.
Yeah, I think it needs to go in both.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
So obviously you don't agree with me, so we'll talk about it.
Talk about it.
Okay, the next issue is when, it's not going to happen on the 11th because the notice hasn't been put out, nor has the comp plan been posted on the website for everybody to take a look at. So when's the soonest we can do this? Now, at a scheduled city council meeting.
Depends on the notification requirements.
Which is 10 days?
That's normal.
So that the 9 o'clock meeting, the second one,
The next
Yeah.
meeting is,
9
The
o'clock.
problem too in Mexico Beach is the paper only prints once a week. And I have this issue in another community I'm working with. So if it's similar to the other community I'm working with, the ad will be due either today or tomorrow to hit the 13th to meet the 10-day deadline for the 25th.
Okay, I will be back in town on the 6th of October. Personally, I would like to see the transmittal meeting scheduled for when I'm here.
Can we Skype then?
Not from the Wind River Range where I'm going to be 20 miles off the nearest road. You can't, no.
What's the date of the October? Is it the 6th?
the next P and Z meeting is October 2nd,
No, when is the council meeting? The first
the
council?
following week. That'd be the 9th.
The 9th of October.
I'll be here then.
I will not be here.
You will not be here.
I could do the 23rd.
We'll just keep pushing it back. Can we have what?
I don't need to be here.
Well, actually, you do.
Yeah.
I think your voice needs to be here. Can we have the verbiage?
How about the 9 o'clock meeting? Can we do it at a 9 o'clock meeting, Mel? Planning meeting for the council?
On the 23rd of October,
Yeah.
there's plenty of time to get a notice in.
You available?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, and what I would like to do, let's tentatively schedule that for now. Whatever we got to do to get the notice out, to get the stuff up on the website so everybody can look at it. And what I would like to do is sit down with you and anybody. I'd just like to set up a meeting in your office. It's the things that we need to recommend as far as economic planning is concerned when we push this out. And what I'll do is explain, when we go to this transmittal hearing, I would like to take it, and you can advise me on this, Mel, to it section by section. These are the changes we made, this is why, and then let them ask questions or anything else after that. Then go to the next one. These are the changes we made, this is why. What are your comments, what are your questions?
They do have a very general memo that I prepared that went through each element. It's very general though.
Yeah, but that's the way I'd like to run this. Because I think that way we can address each issue as it comes up rather than haphazard.
The other thing is too, that they don't have to decide the whole plan at once. If they want to do the sections that you've already voted on and hold the future land use element, you can do that too. It doesn't have to go all at the same time.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do the changes to the future land use the way we discussed today.
Okay.
Get those out, and then at the next planning and zoning meeting on, which is the second, you said?
October 2nd.
October 2nd. Then, if that's fine, the members of the board that are here, do the motion to accept future land use as you've changed it then, and then everything will be ready for transmittal to the board on that meeting, the 23rd.
Certainly, I just let you know that I am out of town from the 29th of September to the 9th of October.
Okay, and I don't think you need to be here
That's
for
fine, I'm
that.
just-
If that's a,
Yeah.
you just do it at the normal, regular meeting,
Okay.
and everything should be taken care of. So is everybody
Good.
good to go with that? Okay, Mel, do you have any more business for us?
I do not, just noting that we probably got some issues to discuss on the 2nd of October. We have 3 submittals for development orders.
Okay, again, I will not be here, and won't be back until the 6th, so. Any other member of the board have anything? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed?